Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be answering a subscriber question. This person asked what they can do to eliminate the micro bubbles or the bubbles within their calcium reactor, and how can they cut down on the sound of the CO2 coming into the chamber here. How can they cut down on the sound when introducing that CO2? Now, I'm going to answer both of those questions, but I'm also going to give you guys a quick overview on how a calcium reactor works so you guys better understand where those bubbles might be coming from. So let's go to move over here to my return section. Now here I have three pumps. I have one for the main display, one for the tub, and then I have this little one here, which is a DC pump that is connected directly to my calcium reactor. Now, the tube that I'm using to connect it is a 1/4 inch RO type of tubing. And I use a DC pump because I use this controller here, which is where I can determine how much flow or dictate how much flow is going through the calcium reactor instead of using a needle valve or a ball valve. Now, that's just a personal preference. It's up to you, but that's what I like to do for my setup. Now, when it comes to the water, it's going to be, depending on your model, it's going to be introduced to the chamber somehow. For me, in this Geo, it's actually in the back here. I don't know if you can really see the tubing, but it comes in through the back, fills up through the bottom. Once it gets to the top here, it then can be circulated via the C-shape pump in the back, and that's where you have your water flow continuously going through. At that point, once it's full, the pressure is going to push the water through the top of this chamber. And if you have a secondary chamber, which I used to have, and I'll add it, down the road, I'll add it again once I have enough coral, it goes through the chambers and it dumps over here to your setup. Now, I have mine going into my skimmer section just for now, because I like to just put it through the skimmer before actually introducing it to the rest of the tank. Personal preference on that when it comes to eliminating or elevating the pH. Excuse me. Now you guys know where the water comes in, how it circulates through the setup itself, and then where it exits. Let's talk about the CO2. Now this is a CO2 tank. I use the carbon doser. It's a personal preference on that. You don't have to use that, and don't mind my wire management. It's super organized, trust me. Yeah. Anyways, that CO2 comes through and is entered through the bottom of the chamber here, or the reactor, goes up through, there's a little bit of a bubble counter here, and then goes into the chamber where then it is mixed with the water flowing, and then the pH is dictated by the probe here, and then that's where the media breaks down evenly, and then again the calcium and alkalinity then goes through the tubing and back into the tank. So that's a quick rundown on how it all works. Now, a very common reason on why you will have microbubbles in the first place is when you initially set up the calcium reactor, you add the media, and you turn the pump on too quickly. What I like to do is when I add media or start a reactor in the beginning, I'll keep the mixing pump, and that is the pump that circulates the water within the reactor. I'll keep that off, and I'll just turn on the feed pump. That's the pump that is pumping the water to the actual reactor from the display, and I'll let that run for at least an hour or so to get as much of those micro bubbles out as you can. At that point, I'll go ahead and turn on the mixing pump. It'll make a little bit of noise at first, but over time those micro bubbles will eventually find their way out of the system through the top. That usually takes care of it, but early on, if you turn the pump on too quick, the mixing pump too quickly, that's where you're going to get those excess bubbles, and they won't really get out of the reactor efficiently. Now, another reason why is that you have your return pump, or you're not your return pump, I guess you could say is returning to the reactor, but your feed pump, you have it in a chamber where there's micro bubbles being introduced. So say you have a sump that doesn't have a water break or a bubble trap or anything like that, and your skimmer is dumping directly near the pump, that's where you're going to get micro bubbles. Or if the pump is too high in the water column and you're sucking air, that's another way to introduce the micro bubbles. Point being, make sure your pump is submerged. Make sure it is away from other pumps or away from any source where it can get air. That will prevent it from sucking any water and getting into the chamber. Outside of that, there really isn't any other way to get air introduced to the chamber besides the CO2. Now, this is where most of the noise comes from for me. Now, once this CO2 carbon doser kicks on, it's going to come through here. You're going to hear like a constant sound every time the bubbles go through. That's pretty common. Now, a way to reduce that sound, for me, it doesn't bother me because it's down here in the basement. It's already loud with printers and all sorts of stuff. It's not really a big deal. But if this was up in my living room, one way to reduce that sound of the CO2 entering is to simply just cut down on how big the bubbles are. You can adjust that by the carbon doser or whatever you have going on for your calcium reactor, but you can make the bubbles smaller and less frequent that will cut down on the overall noise. I wonder if we can hear it here since it did just kick on. Can we hear it? Maybe? Oh, there we go. So that's about it. Again, it's not really loud for me, but if this was in your living room, it probably would be kind of annoying if you're trying to watch a movie or something. But the best thing you can do is just simply turn down how big the bubbles are. Make them smaller. You can do that via the valve on the top there, and then you can also cut down on how often they're being dumped in there. So less frequently would be less air getting into the chamber at one time, reducing that sound overall. So hopefully that answers the question and helps you out. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add to this. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think there's any special device or anything outside of just making sure you're not introducing the bubbles in the first place, and then just cutting down on how big the CO2 bubbles are getting into the chamber. So, yeah, if you guys have any more questions, excuse me, let me know, and I'll be happy to make a video. And I appreciate you guys watching. All right, peace.